Welcome into Jungle Tales, a Pirate Baseball podcast, episode 48 of the program. You're watching This Week in Pirate Baseball, and what a week it was for ECU. They go to Clearwater. You know you have to win the tournament. The Pirates are able to produce that result. And, a 9-4 win over South Florida on Tuesday, a 6-5 win on Thursday over the Charlotte 49ers, where they held on at the end. A 9-7 win on Saturday against the South Florida Bulls once again. And then on Sunday, the Pirates, after dropping the season series to Tulane at Clark LeClaire, produced an 8-2 win over the Green Wave that was really never in doubt. And what a week it was for the Pirates. And the NCAA tournament appearance is the seventh straight for ECU and their 35th of all time. And now to talk about the week that was and what lies ahead as the Pirates are headed to a regional next weekend. I'd like to first welcome in a guy that knows a thing or two about playing in postseason baseball for East Carolina, as he played in 3 NCAA regionals, and that is former pitcher John White. John, how are you?
I'm doing well, Bubba. Good to be on tonight, especially after the weekend we had, the whole week. The team's been down in South Florida now about 10 days, and they had to win the tournament, and they did it. And it just goes resiliency, backs against the wall, came out with 4 straight wins, clean baseball, 2 errors over the week, and just played what we're used to seeing in ECU Pirate baseball. So it was great to see. So thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. We said it was now or never, and the Pirates put the pieces together and found a way to win a couple of close games, and then games 1 and 4 weren't particularly close. I mean, there were definitely moments, where we had to maintain that momentum and not allow the game to become close, and we were able to do that. And now I'd like to welcome in the man with all the stats and their lies, damn lies, and statistics. And then there's Johnny Robertson. JR, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Bubba. It's a pleasure to be here. Hey, man, that was a very satisfying weekend. I mean, the Pirates, they were able to beat 3 teams that they lost series to every one of those teams. But they got their revenge. And I would say those are their 3 biggest AAC rivals as well. So very, very satisfying. I love the fact that we were the 6th seed. We talked about that. I thought it was a great spot for the Pirates. And we dreamed of a perfect, way that it would unwind. And it turned out that it followed that script exactly. And, I just couldn't be happier. I couldn't be happier for them, really. That's what it's all about. But, hey, and adding to what John said, though, not making mistakes. We also we were really good with runners in scoring position. And that was we batted 372 with runners in scoring position, and then we also had some sack bunts, some walks, a couple of RBIs by AP and Irby that didn't count as a hit, but they got runs in. So actually, we were like 481 when we came to the plate with a runner in scoring position to getting him home. So that was good. And we turned 5 double plays. Our opponents only turned 2 double plays, and that helped our pitch count, which was extremely important. We had less pitches than our opponents in every single game. So that added up to, I think, 63 pitches less or something like that. So there you go.
Yeah, I think if you go back to last week.
What's that, John?
No, I was going to say, if you go back to last week's chat we had about the upcoming week in the broadcast, it'll show you that we thought if we could get by South Florida, their ace, and we did. We got him out of the game early, and or made it enough pitches, and we saw him good enough and got him out. And then we talked about how we would meet Charlotte's number 2, and we felt really good about that path. So being the 6th seed was no big deal based on the path that we set out or seen in our view, and that's exactly what happened. And it turned out for the best, and it was great baseball this weekend.
JR, is John breaking up a little for you, or is his
Yeah, just
reception okay?
nah, a little bit. It's normally me that's breaking up, so this time it's John's turn, I guess, but just a little bit, yeah.
This and every episode of This Week in Pirate Baseball is brought to you by PGXGloves.com. Appreciate the loyal support of former East Carolina third baseman Mark Minikazi. Definitely go to PGXGloves.com and check out their selection of batting gloves, golf gloves, and football gloves. You see a couple of their selections there on the screen for our viewers who are tuned in via YouTube and Facebook. But we appreciate everyone watching or listening, whether it's on either of those platforms or via podcast form on Spotify. On social media, you can chime in via at Jungle's Tales Pod on X and Instagram. But guys, earlier this evening, we'll go away from the Pirates here for just a moment and talk about the 16 host sites being announced, and then we'll circle back to that with a little color later on in the conversation and elaborate on where the Pirates could land here in I guess about 12 hours from now. But you had the 16 host sites. 8 of those, not surprisingly, went to the SEC, 3 to the ACC. Then you had 2 to the Sun Belt, 2 to the Big Ten or Pac-12, however you want to look at it. We had joked about that, and then 1, which was kind of also to the former Pac-12 member, Oregon State, who is now a baseball independent. But any initial thoughts on those 16 host sites before we circle back to those later on in the conversation?
I thought they did a great job. I mean, I don't have any issues with any of them. You could make an argument, sure, because they're all so closely, comparable. But no, I thought they did a good job.
And we'll go ahead and throw those. Go ahead, John.
I'm gonna log out back in, guys. I'm sorry. It just seems like I'm providing a little static on the feed here. But I was gonna say Southern Miss is probably the one that people are gonna ask about. But Georgia Tech not getting in from the ACC, being the conference winner, they didn't really play a strong schedule in the ACC. It was one of the weaker ones, so that's probably why they got the snub. But I have no problem with Southern Miss being in.
Right. Yep. And there you see them on the screen: Arkansas, Auburn, Texas, Tennessee, Ole Miss, LSU, Vandy, and Georgia out of the SEC, Clemson, North Carolina, and Florida State from the ACC, Oregon State, the independent Southern Miss and Coastal out of the Sun Belt, and then the Oregon Ducks from the Big Ten, in addition to the UCLA Bruins. And the Bruins, you have East Carolina great Bryant Ward, former Pirate third baseman there, and it was a bit of a resurgence for the Bruins after they've been down the last year or two. But we'll continue to talk more about where ECU may land in regional play next weekend. But then getting back to the week that was, let's start off and take a little bit of a closer look at Tuesday's game and how the Pirates started so strong. The bats were hot in the early innings, and you took a commanding lead. And then Ethan Norby, he was perfect through 3 innings. And they didn't get a base hit until in the 4th. And most of the damage they did do, I guess pretty much all of it outside of 1 base hit, came in the 5th. And then you had a very good relief performance by Diesel.
Yeah, and Braden took care of the offense almost single-handedly, really. He had just an incredible game, 4 for 6, a couple of runs, a couple of RBIs, a home run. I mean,
yeah,
we did.
Yeah. John's back with us now. John, we're talking about Tuesday's game and how the offense, jumped on the Bulls from the get-go, and Ethan Norby, followed up by Ethan Young, were very good.
Yeah, Ethan came out very strong, 6 Ks in the first 6 batters. And then Brad came out, and coach saw something he didn't like, so he came to Ethan pretty quickly, who gave us 3 1/3. He had to leave with a blister. Those are always scary as a pitcher, especially one that spins it like Ethan. But he was able to come back on the weekend, so that's a good sign. But yeah, and then Jake finished it on up. So your big four group and on the team staff came in and did well. And then I heard JR talking about Braden Burris. I mean, he pretty much carried the team. Him and Austin Irby that day were 7 for 13 together. And Jack had a little bit of a bad day at the plate from the 2-hole, but he got back in business the rest of the tournament, so no big deal there. But overall, yeah, they came out and took Corey Braun. Even the left-handers had a game against Corey Braun, and that's really his forte, is our left-handers having trouble against him. So that was a great way to start, and it kind of was the catalyst for us and the momentum to go into the second game and continue on.
Yeah, in that first game against the Bulls on Tuesday, you had a tournament high 15 hits and error-free baseball. One of 3 games that the Pirates played error-free baseball. It was just that Charlotte game where you had a couple of E's, but all in all, especially given the reworked infield where you had Dixon Williams sliding over to short and Braden Burris, who's definitely a middle infielder, former high school shortstop by trade, but has played the corner outfield as well as a little center, I guess, this season. But we saw, even though it didn't result in an out, when we discussed it off the air earlier this evening, just his display of athleticism when he laid out for the ball and was able to make it a relatively close play one time.
Yeah, that was a heck of a play, and he just shows you that he's going to go all out on every play, and pretty awesome to see. And he can play, looks like he can play anywhere on the diamond, if you ask me. But yeah, heck of a player, and hard to believe he's just a freshman this year and came in as a walk-on. But yeah, quite the year, and he looks the part now, and he's showing why he's going to be one of the leaders on this team for years to come.
JR, I think you were about to make a point a moment ago. I inadvertently stepped on you. We had a little lag.
No, I was just enjoying listening to John's clear connection there, and you all discuss it. I didn't have anything to add, honestly.
Okay. So moving on to Thursday, because that's the great thing. You take care of business, you get a day off. However, with that day off, let's make no mistake about it. And like Cliff Godwin was very clear and very quickly pointed out, even after the Pirates had won the tournament on Sunday, that there was no beach time. I go. So make sure that those people on the message board and social media know that there was no beach time, that Coach Godwin got that right.
Yeah, he made some preemptive statements there, because I think last week before the tournament, they asked him that question, or he mentioned maybe I need to take, because they asked if he's going to have some beach time and might have to take that away. But anyway, yeah, so and to that point, they seemed a lot more focused. I know that he mentioned today that they went in and had team dinner, and they watched the 30 for 30 on NC State's magical run back in, what was it, 1982, out there to Albuquerque when they won the national championship against Houston. So that was pretty cool to hear them talk about that. But they did seem more focused. So I don't know if he was joking or not about the beach time, but they definitely did get focused, and they showed what can happen if you play solid, sound baseball.
Yeah, that 1982-83 season, where Jim Valvano and the Wolfpack had that memorable run to the pit in New Mexico, and then took down U of H and Hakeem Olajuwon and company. But he said that they had actually watched it back in 2017 when we came up just shy of when we were the 8th seed, and lost to Houston in the championship game, and he broke it out once again here 8 years later.
Yeah,
But
and it seemed to have worked.
yeah, definitely two very good tournaments in each instance. Let's hope that's not something that we have to make a habit of doing, but definitely effective considering the position we were in. So with that Charlotte game on Thursday, of course, East Carolina had lost 2 out of 3, winning the series finale in that regular season series at Charlotte. And in this game, the Pirates 6-5 winners, and you had Lance Williams get the ball.
Yeah, and Lance, his last outing was excellent, but he came in and gave up 3 base on balls, and you know what happens when that starts, going on with the pitcher. But we did have Brad Pruitt was at his best, come in with 5 solid innings, 66 pitches, and then Jake finishing out. So no harm, no foul there. But yeah, when Lance is on, he's extremely tough. He's got excellent stuff. He just walks kind of getting his way a little bit. Once he irons that out, eventually he's going to be a heck of a pitcher wherever he's at. So I felt like we could get to Cribbs. Looking at foreseeing and seeing if we played Charlotte in the second game, I thought Cribbs was gettable. I thought he got lucky in the second game we played against him in Charlotte. So we got to him and they took him out, and then we got to Chase. So it was just overall, it just felt like it was happening exactly how I was hoping it would, and it turned out to be the case. So a great second win, moving on to the third game.
Well, another note or two that I wanted to point out, since you brought up Cribbs, and I know during the in-game interview, Robert Woodard, the head coach at Charlotte, was asked about that, the decision to go to the bullpen, and he just said that he thought that the East Carolina lineup, had a beat on him, and basically what you just said there, the way we had swung the bat well against him back in the regular season.
Yeah, that's right. Go ahead, JR.
I was just going to say he had gone through the lineup one time completely, and I not only did we have a beat on him, but now he was facing the same lineup the second time around, so probably wasn't going to get better for him.
Yeah, and just real quick, going back to the first game against South Florida, we had Corey Braun lit up pretty quickly. I was surprised they stood with him as long as they did, because every ball that was hit, even the outs, were hit hard. So it was almost like batting practice for the guys, and that's unusual for a guy like Corey Braun. So that was pretty different to see. But obviously he came back in the third game, and it shows you why he's one of the top pitchers in the conference. So
kind of along those lines of thinking, that school of thought, with Ethan Norby. Ethan, I guess, had thrown I think he threw 68 pitches on Tuesday, but when he ran into some trouble there in the fifth, and perhaps in other situations, you may leave him in, depending on the different variables. But, we got him out of the game, and because of that, he was probably able to give us a little bit more on Saturday and Sunday, which proved to be, very big, because 25 pitches in the rematch against South Florida, and then 40 in the championship.
Yep, and if JR mentioned, he went the longest between. Usually he was a everyday Friday starter, right? So we had a big time difference between the last time he pitched and this one, and then all of a sudden, he throws 68 pitches on Tuesday, and then you can realize that he's going to have to come back Saturday or Sunday. I didn't know if he's going to come back Saturday first game like he did, but he did, and it worked out. But it's for him, there's really no set time in between, and he's used to it, being a reliever from last year, so he can mentally adjust to that more than maybe other pitchers can. So it was not surprising to see him be successful in each one of the positions he was put in during the week.
Yep. With his familiarity and just the way he pitched out of the bullpen in 2024, not surprised to see him have that type of success. And, because of that, Ethan Norby, 3 appearances, 8 2/3 innings, 133 total pitches, 68, 25, and 40 was the breakdown in those 3 appearances. 5 runs, 8 hits, and that's kind of the line that I used earlier when I was introducing JR. Is I think it's one that you would hear a lot by the famous author, Mark Twain, with Lies, Damn Lies, and Statistics. You would, with that, that's kind of how I describe this. Because if you weren't watching the game, if you just look at a stat line, 5 runs on 8 hits and 8 2/3, not terrible, but it's definitely not great. The 14 Ks is obviously very good. But if you watched the game and you saw, how most of that, came in that one inning on Tuesday, and how he got us out of multiple critical spots in the other games, this was a pretty easy decision.
Yeah, I know JR is a stat guy here, but I'm pretty sure that's the most pitches in game situations for a week that he's done all year. 133 pitches.
Oh yeah, in 1 week, absolutely.
So, kind of moving on from that. Again, congratulations to Ethan Norby, our PGXGloves.com pitcher of the week, with his 3 appearances and working nearly 9 innings down in Clearwater, and definitely, gives you, a lot of comfort into when he's on the mound, because you feel very confident that he's going to get the job done more often than not. But I saw, give a shout out to former Pirates great Connor Norby of the Miami Marlins, chiming in on social media today when we won the tournament, and giving a shout out to his brother, and saying, "Hey, great job, 1-8. The job's not done." But in that third game against South Florida, that was the only game in which ECU didn't take the lead first. You trailed 4-0 going into the middle innings, but then you produced a 3 spot in the 4th, 7th, and 9th to win, and you got a home run there to take the lead in the top of the 9th inning, and then we're able to tack on a couple more.
Yeah. Speaking of the home run, for the whole 4 games, I mean, we generated 8 more runs from the home run than our opponents. I mean, we hit 7, they hit 4. But we had 14 runs as a result of those 7 home runs, where they only had 6 runs with their 4 home runs. So there were always people on base. I think both of Braden's home runs were solo shots, but other than that, we always had at least 1 or 2 people on base. That played a big role as well.
Yep, and that 3-run shot by Austin Irby, to the right center field gap, and I saw some jokes on social media saying that these ECU batters are wishing the tiki hut, the tiki bar, was in right center field, and when some of these bombs, that are being hit to the right center field gap.
Yeah, Austin Irby, you're seeing, I mean, he's up to about 9 or 10 home runs this year, but he's going to be a long ball hitter for the team, especially back at home in the jungle. He's got a good swing, and when he generates the power, he really hits them a long way. So you might see this many more times if he, at East Carolina.
Hopefully.
Yep. In today's world, you gotta walk gingerly about talking about players in next year. But yeah, he looks to be a really good power hitter.
So, looking at the way we managed the pitching situation, I talked about how we, were fairly quick to get Ethan Norby out there. When things went awry a bit in the fifth inning on Tuesday, and you look at it for the week, 4 games, across 6 days. You had 7 pitchers used. Ethan Norby, 3 appearances, a total of 133 pitches. You had Jake Hunter. He saw action in all 4 games. Brad Pruitt saw action in 3 games. The majority of that action was in the Charlotte game, in which he worked 5 hitless and scoreless innings. And then Ethan Young, 2 appearances where he threw 62 or 63 pitches, I think a total of 125 for the week in 8 2/3. And then Sean Jenkins, Brad Zayak, and Lance Williams all had an appearance apiece. And going into the day, in the matchup with Tulane, Sean Jenkins, in my opinion, Coach Godwin didn't announce it in the post game, and that wasn't surprising, but it was pretty obvious, I thought, who we would start in the championship.
Yeah, and I was talking to my father, and he's like, "Well, who's ECU going to pitch?" And I says, "Well, they have an ace in the hole," is the way I described it. They have the young man, Sean Jenkins. I said he's dominated in games. He's been a little bit inconsistent. We've all known that, but when he's on, he can shut down other teams. And he went out there and did exactly that. So we had an ace in the hole going into today's game, and it proved to work out for us.
It definitely did, and I was thinking, you never know, how things will come full circle. And you think back several weeks ago, I guess it was right there. Perhaps it was the final weekend of April. I was traveling up in Richmond for my son's AAU tournament, and following the debacle when we were down 20-0 in the 5th inning to this same Green Wave team. And Coach Godwin was asked about that in the post game today, and he just said that's pretty unprecedented, uncharted waters. Facing a 20-0 deficit in the 5th inning at a program like East Carolina, and just to see where the team went from that point to now, especially in the last week, because definitely didn't have the finish to the last month of the season that any of us would have liked. But give these guys that face so much adversity, so much criticism, via social media and so forth, all the credit in the world for sticking together. And you got to love it for guys like Riley Johnson, Jake Hunter, Dixon Williams, who have been around and part of this program. And then a guy like Braden Burris, who even as a true freshman has really taken on a leadership role. And Coach Godwin talked about that. I guess it was after the second win over South Florida, perhaps, where he just said, he's in the dugout saying, "Hey, we're not going to let this guy right here beat us, and we're going to force him to leave the game and force the Bulls to go to the bullpen."
Yeah, and if you think about what you were saying, I mean, this team this year was just a victim of how successful this program has been over the years. It's been up and down season. You got freshman, veteran like Jake Hunter, who's been great for stabilizing the bullpen. So it's great to see for him as well. But it's just a mix of players and trying to find the right mix that worked. It seemed like finally we talked about identity in the past. It seems like coaches has kind of settled in on that when it comes to the offensive side. And as far as the pitching staff, you see who the big 5 are, and he's going with that that grouping. So it looks like we have more of an identity. It looks like it's came together. And in last 4 games, it proves that no matter what's happened in the season, that the tournament is a whole new season, and you have a chance to redeem yourself. And they're going home as champions of the AAC, and they're going to the NCAA, and that is what it's all about. They have a shot still.
Absolutely. Hey, Bubba, I'm getting a text from Tom Earnhardt, who wants me to mention that consistently throughout the season, he says, Cliff has said, when we get to Clearwater, no one is going to want to play us. And then he says, it's been a long time since I've seen a coach call it like that.
Yeah, that is true. I remember Cliff Godwin multiple times saying, I truly believe that we'll be playing our best baseball come conference tournament time. And, with the program that had so much transition and, so many new pieces, and not only players, but then also, support staff. And I think a lot of that was underestimated, and someone who hasn't been part of a program and you've seen the behind the scenes and just how those different personalities and ways of doing things have to come together. And, we have such a great culture. You always hear about it with East Carolina baseball, but that doesn't guarantee anything. And this year, we saw this team grow a tremendous amount, especially here of late. But you can't, just because the results didn't happen, over the last month or two, from that point where we were 20-10 and 6-0 in conference play, we went something like 9-15, and then I guess 7-14 in the league, and to do that, and then do what we did this week it speaks to all the mental training that these guys go through with bringing in members of the military, the mission week. All that is geared toward all the possibilities that you can face, whether it's success and handling that or handling a much larger amount of adversity than what the program's used to.
Absolutely. Hey, there's a reason why Cliff is the only coach in the nation that has won either a conference and or a regular season title, either a tournament title or a regular season title for 7 years in a row. Nobody else has done that. Nobody's done it for 6. It's incredible. People don't realize what an accomplishment it is, but it's tremendous.
And if you going back to your friend who texted you, stating what he said about going down to the tournament, that's true. But now we look ahead, and if let's just say we go to Conway and play Coastal, I know Coastal Carolina does not want to see a 3-seed ECU in their regional because that would be one of the tougher 3 or 4 seeds. I'm not saying ECU's got a 3-seed; they probably are. I'm just making a guess they will be. But that's going to be tough to see East Carolina come into your regional as a 3-seed.
Oh, no doubt.
Before we put a bow on the weekend, guys, and focus on what lies ahead with the regional and where the Pirates may be headed, be it Coastal Carolina or otherwise, and we'll talk about some of the projections we've seen, be it from D1 Baseball, Baseball America, or whomever. Any final thoughts on the weekend?
I got just a closing thought. I would be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to Walker Barron. He was tremendous behind the plate, and we were talking before the show. We were all concerned about South Florida's speed. I mean, they're far and away the leader in the conference in stolen bases. They had 83 coming in with an 81% success rate, and they were 1 for 3 against the Pirates, and they got picked off twice from first base. So, I mean, we couldn't have controlled their running game any better than that. And I thought that was huge, and Walker was a big part of that, obviously.
Yep, and kind of going off memory here from watching the ESPN Plus feed. Let's very quickly run through on the Pirates that were on the all-tournament team that was recognized after the win over Tulane. And so you had Walker Barron, Colby Wallace, Dixon Williams, Braden Burris, Austin Irby. Then you had Jack Herring and Riley Johnson. You, of course, had Ethan Norby, Sean Jenkins. Is that it? Am I leaving a pitcher or two out?
I haven't seen that list.
Gotcha. I think I got all those. I may have left someone or maybe two pitchers out inadvertently, but just going off memory here, I think those were the all-tournament team members. And so, and then you of course had you had several guys from Tulane as well that were well deserved, much deserving, and well deserved honors, I should say. But I believe John White is back with us now. John, very quickly before we move on and talk about the regional, we were running through the all-tournament team and the Pirates that were selected, and I mentioned Walker Barron, Colby Wallace, Braden Burris, Dixon Williams, Austin Irby, Riley Johnson, Jack Herring, Sean Jenkins, Ethan Norby. Were there any more pitchers?
I think that was it. I can't say 100%, to be honest with you, Bubba, but
Gotcha.
I think that was it. I know
Gotcha.
Sean was, and I know Ethan was. Yes.
And then I also mentioned, just how Tulane had several guys on that team, as you would expect as well, and those guys were much deserving.
Yeah, and if you go back to talking about Walker Barron, I'm not sure if you talked about that, and JR mentioned the running against us was non-existent, really, and that's South Florida's team. That's their forte. We played them twice, and I think that's the culmination of keeping the base pass clean and Walker getting into that all-tournament team.
Right. And yes, JR discussed that right as you were signing out. But kind of looking forward now, guys. When we here earlier, we ran through the host sites. We'll quickly put that up on the screen here once again. And so there you see the 16 hosts. You have 8 from the SEC, 3 from the ACC, and then 2 from the Sun Belt, 2 from the Big Ten. Thanks to their acquisitions from the Pac-12, and then you have the independent of Oregon State. So any surprises in there? I know, JR, you said that you thought they did a very good job with the selection of these 16 host sites.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, somebody else can make an argument for like John said, Georgia Tech winning the ACC or another number of teams. But no, I think that, they did a great job.
Yeah, and I think the Georgia Tech thing stems from they didn't play the toughest schedule in the ACC. Southern Miss was coming off a 16-game winning streak till they played Coastal, who now has an 18-game winning streak. Not sure if everybody's aware of that, but both those teams were riding hot hands, and Southern Miss just rode theirs in. They did lose to Coastal in the championship game, but they rode theirs into a host regional. And they were a preseason pick to host, and people – on paper, they have a great team, great squad. So it's no surprise that Southern Miss gets a host.
Yeah, not at all. Yeah, I knew they both had strong finishes to the season, but until you pointed that out earlier, no, I did not realize that they were on those, 16 and 18 game win streaks, or 16 and 17 entering the day, respectively. Right there, approaching what the Pirates did back in 2022, where where we won 20 straight prior to losing to that game against Coastal, and then bouncing back with a win over the Chanticleers to take the regional.
Yeah, I think go ahead, JR.
No, I was just going to say, I think that having a regional in Hattiesburg is good for baseball, good for college baseball. It's a great environment. It reminds me a lot of Greenville, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
I'm happy for them, and I'm glad to see that they got it.
yes, sir. Yep, you're totally right on that. And I think the winning streaks for both of them shows that they win the games they're supposed to, but it also shows the Sun Belt was a little bit down this year, because that typically won't happen in most years in the Sun Belt Conference.
True.
Yep. You had programs, like a Louisiana, Georgia Southern, that were not themselves this season. Something else that jumped out to me, and we've discussed this, and that is how the Big 12 does not have a host site.
Yeah, I think we need to get JR to do more research for us on that. I know we asked him to do it.
Well,
it's been a long time since that's never happened, right?
It has been. I went back to 2002, and they've hosted every year since then. And I'll go back further, but it's been a long, long time since they have not had a host team. That's for sure.
Yeah, you want to talk about hot teams going into the tournament. I think Vanderbilt's probably playing good enough to get the overall number one. But as we mentioned off air, JR, you did, that you don't want to have Florida Gators coming to your regional as a 2 seed.
I certainly don't.
Yeah, at one point, and I guess this is 2 years in a row that the Gators have done this, because
last year they were a little bit worse per se. They picked it up.
Oh yeah, much worse in their overall record, because I think it was last year where they like 28-28 or something, or
Yeah,
they were 500.
The committee got grief over that one, that's for sure. But they showed why the committee picked them, because they actually did really well in the tournament.
Right, and this year, at one point, I think they were about 10 games under 500 or something close to that, and then they finished maybe 15 or more games over 500. Do either of y'all have the record in front of you? But I think they're maybe 37-23 or something.
Yeah, I do not, Bubba. I apologize. Normally I would have that.
Something else that stood out to me is just one host site in the state of North Carolina. That is, of course, the North Carolina Tar Heels, who won the ACC tournament in convincing fashion. Had a 14-0 lead, and then cruised to a 14-4 win. And there's only 3 host sites in the 3-state region of Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina, whereas in recent years there's been as many as, I think 8 one year, where you had Virginia Tech hosting, and then you had at least 3 of the ACC programs hosting in addition to the Pirates, and then a couple of hosts in South Carolina as well.
True. Virginia got shut out, so that's unusual in itself. But they have a limited number of schools. It's not like North Carolina, but I was shocked. That's a trend that won't continue, I don't think.
Taking a look at this list of hosts, as far as where the Pirates have been down through the years. In 2002, we went to Clemson and Coach DeClaire's last year, when he was no longer in the dugout because of the effects of ALS. And we ended up losing in the regional championship. It was, I guess, actually game 6 because we were going to have to beat Clemson twice back when they had Khalil Green and, a really stacked roster under Jack Leggett. And you think about that staff. You had Jack Leggett, Eric Bakich is a volunteer assistant, I believe it was, and Tim Corbin, of course, the longtime Vandy head coach that's won national titles there in Nashville, and then also O'Sullivan that's done everything he's done in Gainesville with the Gators. So and then you also the Pirates have been in regional at Coastal back in 2008, and then they've been in regionals at North Carolina multiple times. 2007 and 2012 come to mind, and then of course the 2009 Super Regional.
Sean?
Yeah,
And,
I'm here. Yeah, I was just thinking about the coaching tree from that Clemson. The Clemson seems to always pull in some great coaches, and they got Jack Leggett down there now, helping out in the dugout. So it's weird to see him not being a head coach personally, because I've always known him as a head coach. But yeah, Clemson's always pulling some great coaches down that way.
there's someone at one point, obviously they're thrilled to be a host, but they really had a slide the second half of the season. They struggled to get people out, and because of that, they played themselves out of a top 8 seed. I would think, wouldn't you guys agree?
Oh
I would,
yeah,
definitely.
yeah. If you look at the top 8. And JR and I were speaking of this. They're probably going to put one of the Oregon teams in the top 8 just to have the West Coast presence. But you're looking at Auburn, Vanderbilt, Georgia, Texas, UNC, Arkansas. So yeah, and you might get FSU in there if you're lucky, but I think FSU's out based on Oregon's going to be probably the number 8 seed, one of the Oregon teams, the overall 8. But yeah, Clemson's not going to be in there, and great team, but they didn't finish as strong. I mean, they were in the ACC championship and they got handled pretty easily today by UNC, but they just didn't finish strong enough to make a bid for those top 8.
Really glad to see Southern Miss hosting, as they've done so many times down through the years at Pete Taylor Park there in Hattiesburg. You think, guys, here in recent years, you've seen the committee send, I guess, Tennessee and Ole Miss. I think perhaps one of those, maybe it was Tennessee, was a super regional, but I think they maybe also went there for a regional. But you've had a couple of SEC teams get sent there. It's going to be very intriguing tomorrow to see where Mississippi State lands.
Yeah, and they had a coaching change late in the year this year, so that was a little bit different to see for a team like that. They're going to be a team looking out for a coach, and it'll be a sought after position. Obviously, one of the more elite teams in the country, so it'll be interesting to see what happens there for sure.
And Texas, obviously an excellent first season under Jim Schlossnagle, with him coming over from A&M. And speaking of A&M, they finished, I think, 30-26 and 11-19 in the SEC. And with that 11-19 record, even as loaded as the SEC is, I just think that's, if they get in, even though I do think they're probably one of those, the top teams in the country. If you're saying are the Aggies truly one of the top 64 teams, I think the hands down answer is yes. But at the same time, I do think it's a joke if they get in. What do y'all think?
Well,
personally, I don't think they're in. Go ahead, JR.
Okay. Well, you that's what I was going to say, John. You and I think we talked about it. They were definitely in a few weeks ago, but yeah. I mean, getting swept by Missouri might have been
at home.
Yeah, that might have been like more than the committee can handle. I don't know. I mean, they could sneak in. I've heard some people have them in their, projections, but like Bubba said, it would be a joke.
It
I
definitely
don't.
won't surprise me, but I think if they would have won 2 out of 3 against Missouri and they're 13-17, and then I guess 32-24 overall, I'd say they're in. But because of that Missouri series, I think that was the straw that broke the camel's back. And I think, but didn't they respond by taking 2 out of 3 at Georgia?
Yeah, they did.
Just such a tough team to figure out. They had series wins at Georgia, at Tennessee, and at Arkansas, taking 2 out of 3 from each of those very challenging places to win. 3 teams that are all host and potentially top 8 seeds. That's crazy. And sorry, John, I can go ahead. I know I accidentally stepped on you. We had a little lag there.
Nope, you covered everything. I'm good.
Anything else regarding these hosts? Oregon State had to play an unbelievable number of road games because of their conference situation, and give them credit. And they challenged themselves and really, built a nice RPI as a result of having to play so many road games. I heard the D1 baseball guys talking about that, and how will the committee weigh that? Because yes, they challenged themselves, but is that RPI a true depiction, of them relative to other teams because of the, substantial number of road games that wouldn't have been played had it not been for their situation?
Yeah, and they didn't have the benefit of playing in a conference tournament. So yeah, they didn't play. The strength of schedule is not going to be there. It's there for who they had to play, but they just didn't play enough of it to, in my opinion, to be considered by the committee. But you never know. They did beat Oregon three games, and that helps. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Overall, I think Oregon probably get the nod ahead of them a little bit, but we shall see.
Going into the host selections tonight, where was, well, I guess I know the UCLA RPI, had to have been, top 15 or so, because the lowest RPI of a host was, what do you say, JR, 18 or 19?
Yeah, 19. That was Southern Miss. And
I guess the Bruins lost in the Big Ten title game to Nebraska.
5-0.
Yep. And I'm sorry, go ahead. You said something about Southern Miss.
No, I was just, you had asked me, I was saying yes, Southern Miss was 19, and UCLA was 15.
So any other things? Obviously Auburn, they had a very solid season, and then Arkansas, a lot of folks at one point thought they were the best team in the country after their good mid-season to late season run, but then those final 2 or 3 weekends, they seems like they had some struggles there at one juncture, and which is not surprising when you're in the league the caliber of the SEC. You're gonna probably stump your toe a time or two. But anything else jump out at you guys? I know we hadn't really talked about the Tar Heels, and they really finished strong and won the conference tournament.
Yeah, nothing really stands out. I see nothing to argue about. As JR mentioned, someone's going to always have an argument, but I see none to argue on my perspective.
Well, final thing or two before we wrap this up, and in this edition of This Week in Pirate Baseball, and while I'm thinking about it, I wanted to mention that we will have a show later today. Once we find out where the Pirates are headed, we'll talk about who ECU will be facing in the regional opener, and then the potential second round matchup, as well as the bracket as a whole. But do you guys have a preference? There have been some projections. I know one of the latest D1 baseball projections had us going to Coastal Carolina. It had Coastal as the 1, Wake Forest as the 2, East Carolina as the 3, and I think it was USC Upstate as the 4. But whether it's Conway, Clemson, Knoxville, Athens, Nashville, you guys have a preference?
I do not. I'm just happy to be there. So.
Yeah, we're talking preferences now, but last week we were wondering if we were going to get anywhere. So I'm pretty happy about that right now. So
yeah,
tomorrow
ain't it great? Ain't it great?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, how about them Pirates? How about them Pirates?
And then I realized that we did not announce our PGXGloves.com Player of the Week. There were other guys that were definitely worthy of some consideration, like a Riley Johnson, who made so many tremendous catches. We talked about the one that he made in the first inning against Charlotte, where the Pirates could have been facing a 1-0 deficit with another runner in scoring position with nobody out, and instead you have a runner on first with 1 out because of the play he made in the right center field gap, leaving his feet and then skying to take away what would have been at least a double, if not a triple, for the 49ers batter. But Riley had another terrific week. Dixon Williams, but then Braden Burris, 9 for 20, 2 bombs, a double, 5 runs batted in, 6 runs scored. He stole 2 bases. He also reached base via a walk. And you can't say enough about the Pirate freshman, who will undoubtedly be on scholarship moving forward. And Coach Godwin addressed that today in the postgame.
Yeah,
you can't ask for more from a leadoff hitter and a defender like he is. And watch the video of him and Riley talking after the game, and it was kind of a passing of the torch thing between the two. Riley being the senior and Braden the freshman, and similar styles of all-out type play, and just their at-bats are quality at-bats, for the most part. So it's great to see and have a freshman come in and do what he's done. That's unprecedented.
We appreciate everyone tuning in to this edition of This Week in Pirate Baseball here on Jungle Tales. Be sure to follow us at Jungle Tales Pod on X, Instagram, as well as our YouTube channel. Like, comment, subscribe, all of those things on all of those platforms. Also, be sure to, if you love Pirate Baseball, you need to donate what you can, what your situation allows you to do for the Pirates via the 23 Club. You can go to 23club.org, and that's a secure way to make your gift. It's a branch of Team Boneyard, and yes, I know a lot of folks you've probably heard in recent weeks the evolution, of the Purple and Gold Society. As we get ready for revenue sharing. Coming up here in just a little over a month, I guess, in July. But I've been told, from the powers that be and the decision makers, that the 23 Club, will continue on, and we'll continue to give Cliff Godwin, Jeff Palumbo, and the staff, the resources they need to keep this program amongst the nation's best programs. But so go online to 23club.org and support the Pirates today. And, that will do it for this edition of the show. Guys, any final thoughts as we wrap up?
Let's just keep it rolling. No, let's go Thursday to wherever we're being sent and keep it going.
Yep. So for former East Carolina pitcher, John White, Johnny Robertson, better known as Johnny Stats. I'm Bubba Rosenbaum. You've been watching and listening to a championship edition of This Week in Pirate Baseball. We appreciate you tuning in. We'll talk to you soon. And as always, go Pirates.